be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Deakin.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Speaker. Look, as this lamentable motion points out, there is no doubt that the Ebola virus does pose a grave threat to the health and to the security of the nations of West Africa and indeed the wider world. And from the government's perspective in dealing with this matter, we have three main objectives. Firstly, to ensure that we're prepared to deal with any Ebola threat in Australia. Second, that we're prepared to deal with any threat in our sphere of influence in the region. And thirdly, to assist in the global effort to combat the virus. We are fortunate that the chances of an Ebola outbreak in Australia are low. Indeed, as Australia's Chief Medical Officer pointed out, Professor Chris Bagley, there is no epidemic threat to Australia, and our border procedures are sufficient enough to deal with any possible threat. The Chief Medical Officers from around the country have also recently met with the Health Minister and discussed the importance of ensuring our hospital system is well prepared to receive any Ebola patients should the need arise. From an international perspective, of course, the most important fact for us to ensure is that we're ready to deal with any threat in our region. And in this respect, the government has confirmed that a team of 20 health workers, of which my colleagues mentioned earlier, are available to be dispatched from Australia as an immediate response to our regional neighbours should there be an outbreak. In terms of the broader international effort to combat Ebola, the best and most effective way that Australia can contribute to the response at this time is by doing our bit to fund international organisations and frontline health services. To date, we've contributed $18 million, which includes $10 million to the UN Ebola Response Multi-Partner Trust Fund, $3.5 million to the WHO Consolidated Regional Response, $2.5 million for frontline health services through NGOs such as Caritas, World Vision, Plan International and Save the Children, and an additional $2 million to support the UK's delivery of frontline services in Sierra Leone. This is, of course, in addition to the $40 million already provided to the World Health Organisation over the past 12 months. And let me remind members opposite who glibly get up to the dispatch box and say we're not doing enough. The UN Special Envoy on Ebola, Dr David Nabarro, praised the Australian government's additional contribution of $10 million, stating, and I quote, "It was exactly the kind of quick and effective response the UN is asking of member states." World Vision CEO Tim Costello has also acknowledged the government for the grant made to his organisation, who have been doing such wonderful work on the ground. It's therefore disappointing and, quite frankly, frustrating to sit here and see Labor trying to point score on this humanitarian issue. And this point scoring has been most starkly highlighted by the final and most substantial part of this motion, that is, that Australia should send health workers to West Africa at this time. As the Prime Minister has stated, we are considering requests to send Australian health workers to West Africa, but we'll only accept such a request if we can guarantee the safety of our workers. And unlike the irresponsible approach of the Labor Party, we'll never order Australian personnel to travel to West Africa, potentially being exposed to Ebola, without an ironclad ability for world-class medical treatment to those who would be sent. It's not good enough to stand at the dispatch box and say, "Oh, I'm pretty sure that the UK or the US would treat an Australian health worker," as the member for Kingsford Smith glibly said at the dispatch box earlier. No. The government will only send Australian workers to West Africa if we can absolutely guarantee them and their families that if they were to contract Ebola, we have either appropriate on-the-ground medical treatment for them, and in the absence of that, an ability to evacuate them to a place where they can get world-class medical treatment. And the Labor Party have absolutely no answers for that. So to get up at the dispatch box and argue for this ridiculous motion saying that we should send Australian health workers
Order.
into harm's way in West Africa is an absolute
Time for
outrage.
this debate has expired.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The